link to your friends, and they can have a free webinar series for it. So officially, I'm going to open this webinar and hackathon, and I'll just give a few small description about what is this all about. And only for today, there will be a slight shift in the timings, where not from 10, it may start from 10:45 or 11, but from tomorrow we will start at 10, because since today is an introduction day, we are just shifting 1 hour. As per the schedule, it is 10 to 12:30. Now we will shift to 11 to 12:30, and we will have a also we will have a panel discussion, little extended till maybe 1 or 1:30. And then from tomorrow we will properly stick to the timelines which we had supposed to do, okay, as per the brochure. So let me start this. So I am going to start with a quote: whenever the art of medicine is love, there is only a love of humanity, said by Hippocrates. On a similar line, the art of everything lies with heart, and the heart of any art is humanity. We are indeed lucky to be integral part of the systems that uplift the vanity of humanity. In this regard, we are happy to organize such a system at Center of Excellence Computational Genomics (RBCE) in collaboration with Department of Clinical Health, Narayana Hrudayalaya Limited, to organize the 5-day webinar and hackathon event Drug Discovery Today from 14th to 19th September 2020. So 17th is being a holiday, general holiday, you will have a break on 17th, but you can utilize it for your hackathon solutions for that. It is intriguing event to address the young and bright minds towards the current scenario and opportunities in drug discovery. The event also comprises a hackathon event on various topics which will help the participants to work and get insight on advanced topics. I heartily welcome you all for this wonderful event, and I hope you make the best out of this event and thus help in uplifting the vanity of humanity. So I would also like to thank Dr. Alban Sigamani, who is the group head, Dr. Clinical Research Team, Narayana Hrudayalaya, who is the head for this party, who is a brainchild for all these things to start a webinar, and also Dr. Charita Gangadharan, who has constantly helped us and supporting, helping right from getting the speakers and implementing at every stage. I have to thank Dr. Charita, and also my JRFs, COE, SRF and JRF, Dr. Akshay and Dr. Vasant Kumar, who has done completely structure for this particular webinar. And so with this, I want to say that already I've told about the event. So the event will be the webinar series to have some of the ideas which is all ongoing, because the research what we do at academics is only limited to the thing that is in paper. But what is that, the application level, what the patient need, what is the society needs, can become only from the doctors and some of the people who are at the application side. So we want to get an input about what is the recent things that they are facing and the problem that has to be solved. And then that will be taken again from Center of Excellence Computational Genomics in solving the problem and having a collaboration tightened with the paper publication. And then we are going to have a joint fundings from the government or wherever the institute, so that our lab and the collaboration becomes more active. So this is the complete thing that structure of it. And I want to tell about the Department of Clinical Research, NH, the Clinical Research Department and Narayana Health. So specializes in conducting and enabling novel and systemized research aimed at drug positive direction, with dedicated facilities and teams to support clinical trial and research. Narayana Health is capable of supporting clinicians and organizations alike in the development of new healthcare delivery system. In this, RVCE is also privileged to be a part of collaborator with them. The services of the department cover the entire study cycle from feasibility studies to archival, in line with the Narayana Health's high ethical standards. In department also ensures the clinical trials are conducted in compliance with regulatory requirements and ensures that protect the safety, well-being and right of the subject. So this is what all about NH and all the problems that has been posted by them. And I am very privileged that I'm heading Center of Excellence Computational Genomics, and those problems along with the people who are ready to work as a team with them, all these 24 participants, I like to congratulate them now. They are the part of our team and they will be helping us to fulfill the dream of us, fulfill the dream of the society, and fulfill the dream of what exactly the human being, the trauma they are undergoing, and how to come up over it. So this is a part of this. And also I would like to say that all the 5 speakers are eminent, and you are all lucky to have such a speaker who are also going to throw the problems on you, and you are going to give the solution. So in this, right from Dr. Alban, me, till the last trainee who is going to be trained, and who are going to, all are going to be privileged to give back to the society. And I thank for giving this opportunity, and I'm going to give the mic to Dr. Charita, who is going to give an introduction about Dr. Manikanta Murahari, and then we will start this. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vidya, for a brief introduction and so it's my pleasure and honor to welcome the speaker of the day, Dr. Murali Manikanta Murahari, Department of Pharmaceutical Chemistry. Ramaiah University of Bangalore. His doctoral research involved design and synthesis of novel acridone-based derivatives as multi-drug resistant modifiers and their membrane-perturbing potency in cancer cells using different computational modeling approaches. He did this at SVKM's Dr. Bhanuban Nanavati College of Pharmacy, NIMS University campus, Mumbai, as a JRF funded by the DST serve. So post-PhD, he joined as assistant professor in Ramaiah University and is actively involved in the research activities conducted in the department. He was involved in the process of designing and optimization of molecules from hit to lead and has optimized some of the lead molecules, lead for a wide range of therapeutic targets. He has already optimized lead molecules for various therapeutic targets. He is also an alumnus of Manipal College of Pharmaceutical Sciences, Manipal University, where he did his post-graduation in the discipline of pharmaceutical chemistry. His areas of expertise includes structure and ligand-based drug design techniques, virtual screening, molecular dynamics, database searching, structure prediction and analysis. And he has quite somewhere around 22 publications to his credit, both national and international journals, peer-reviewed journals. So I welcome Dr. Manikanta Murahari to take over the stage.
Thank you, Dr. Charita, for the nice introduction. I'm also thankful to Dr. Vidya for making me a part of this wonderful webinar series. Yeah. So very good morning to the gathering. So today my talk is on adoption of AI in drug discovery, that is artificial intelligence in drug discovery. So nowadays, the technology is being advanced, and because of this, so it's a very common term where we hear that artificial intelligence. So in every aspect, not only the drug discovery process, so like in every industry, we are able to hear that. So the significance of artificial intelligence and all. So today's my talk. So first we are going to listen about what is actually this artificial intelligence. So and what is the traditional process of drug discovery, and where this artificial intelligence can fill the gaps in the drug discovery process, so that we can do where we can identify the molecule within a very short span and with a minimal expenditure. So because time and money is one of the very challenging tasks for today's drug discovery process. So now we can see the situation of COVID-19 pandemic also. So then we'll see, we'll discuss one case study, how the drug discovery started with the role of artificial intelligence and all. Okay. So hope my voice is clear and you could see my slides.
Yes, sir, it is loud and clear. You can continue.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. This term artificial intelligence was first used in 1956 at a computer science in Dartmouth. So what they have tried is they tried to model the human brain, how it actually works and all. But once they started working on it, they found that it is very complex because how the human brain works and all, what kind of signal processing happens. So once they started interpreting all those things, so they couldn't mimic that in the machine. So after the study, what they are identifying is, what is the key factors, what they could identify is about the capacity of the human brain. So one thing, they could see that three features are there. So one is the learning, that is, the human brain has the ability to interact with the changing and spontaneous environments. So this is very important and key factor. So where we miss that in the machine. Another thing is natural language processing for human machine interaction. The third one is the creativity. So to liberate humanity from many of its troubles. So if you are able to design a machine where it can have all these three factors like learning and language processing and creativity, so definitely that becomes, so what all we wanted to do, so that can be done by the machine. So, but we have to accept that computers are still far from modeling human intelligence to the perfection. So though we do so many advances and all, but definitely machine is there, but it can do certain up to some tasks only because it doesn't have any brain. So that means it doesn't have any thinking ability or the creativity and all. So whatever we tell, only machine can do only that much. So machine cannot take any independent decisions or it cannot be a better troubleshooting device and all. So later, because of the advancements, so they could do some modifications. They could build some algorithms or programs to make machine an independent thing. So that is what about artificial intelligence and all. So the term itself applies that artificial intelligence that means. So we are allowing the machine just to come near to the human brain. So not exactly to that. Yeah. So we'll just see the common definition, like whenever we read any papers or something. So these are the very three common terms we come across, that is artificial intelligence, machine learning and deep learning. So what actually the difference between them is, so if you look at this artificial intelligence, it is a science like maths or biology, where it studies ways to build intelligent programs and machines that can creatively solve the problems, which has always been considered a human prerogative. So we always think that, of course, that is true also. So only human brain can think and do the things, can solve the problems and all. So now whatever thing is like artificial intelligence is, we are training the machine to do the similar activities of the human brain. Next term is machine learning. So it is a subset of artificial intelligence. So actually, artificial intelligence comes under, machine learning and deep learning comes under the artificial intelligence. So it is a subset of artificial intelligence that provides the systems the ability to automatically learn and improve from experience without being explicitly programmed. So machine learning, it's a kind of algorithm based and all. So where we can, it will experience the issue, whatever is happening. Like I'll tell you one simple example, like YouTube. If you take YouTube and all, so just you listen some A.R. Rahman's music for 2-3 days. So automatically when you log into the YouTube your account, so from the third or fourth day onwards, it automatically suggests you that what are the playlists of the A.R. Rahman and all. So that is the way. So you are like, based on the situations, it will try to adjust and it will adapt to the situations and it will understand that okay, this is your interest. So it is not being programmed. So this is this is one simple example where we can understand the role of machine learning. So there are different algorithms and all that helps to solve the problems. That means machine has the ability to read and understand, because in YouTube, if you take, there are so many registers will be there and everyone will have their own interest. So, but once you log into your account and if you start listening, if you're paying attention to one particular group or one particular thing, so then the machine will automatically understand your interest and it will start showing what are the similar things under that particular thing. The next thing is deep learning or deep neural learning. So this is again the subset of machine learning. which uses the neural networks to analyze different factors with a structure that is similar to the human neural system. So under the machine learning, so this deep learning comes. So it is one of the strategy to algorithm based and all, as I said. So machine learning works on the algorithm based and all. So deep learning, it is one of the strategy where it is similar to the how our neural network system, how our your nervous system will function in a way. So it will try to mimic that. So there are many other strategies and many other algorithms which are there, but deep learning is one of the way which is trying to mimic our nervous system. So that's why it is having a lot of hype. It is being created, and many of these algorithms which are being developed under artificial intelligence, they are using this deep learning algorithm. So now the question is, now we can think how machines can learn this. So one way is we're teaching computers how to learn without the need to be programmed for specific tasks. So if you want to allow the machine to do to take independent decisions and to function independently, so what is the supposed to thing we have to do is, so we have to train the machine in such a way that so it will understand and adapt to that particular situation, should be able to. That means we have to train that. So that is possible only by programming or algorithms. So we have to write the algorithm in such a way that it has to understand the situations or it has to read what is actually happening. So based on the previous history, so it has to see and understand the situation and accordingly it has to act. So for that reason, for that purpose, so what is required? So to do that, three components are mainly required. So one is data sets, features, and algorithm. So data sets means, so it includes numbers, images, text, or any kind of other data. So you need to provide certain amount of data to the system. Then, so it usually takes a lot of time and effort to create a good data set. So definitely it automatically takes, like you need to provide the preliminary amount of data. So based on that, it will try to analyze that particular data and see, so it will work accordingly. So next one is features. So features are the key to the solution of the task. So it demonstrates to the machine that what to pay attention, and training data and validation set. So along with the data, you should also give certain features. So that means you need to fix certain targets or limits, right? So that the machine will understand what type of data it can use or how it can use the data, how it can analyze the data. So what is the positive aspect? What is the negative aspect? So these features are kind of a checkpoints or controls, so limits and all. So first you need to provide the complete data, and then you have to tell the features. That means how it has to use the data. So that has to be featured and that has to be given. So then you need to give some algorithm, that is manually encoded instructions. So when you make your algorithm based on these data set and based on the features, so then automatically it will understand. So when you give some input, so that is actually called as a model. So machine learning algorithm. That means whatever you're giving these data, features, and the algorithm. So this combination is called as a model. So once you create a model by using any of these techniques, so then automatically, so whatever input you give, so based on that, it will give you the output. So for that, again, the accuracy of this output always depends upon the data what you are giving. So the accuracy, the more, the better data you give. So the better features you give, the better algorithm you give. So based on that, that much fast it can interpret and analyze the data, and it will give you back the results. So here the main challenging part is creating these three parts, that is data sets, features, and algorithm. So if we are successful in doing that part, so then the machine can give you the results where within a very short span of time. So where the humans cannot do it in that span of time. Yeah. So now algorithm, as I was telling, so the accuracy or speed of getting the results, it always depends upon the algorithm. So same task can be solved using different algorithms. So there are different algorithms are there. So maybe you can use an independent algorithm or you can use a combination of algorithms so that so it will recognize the patterns and make valuable predictions. So algorithm is also again a crucial and important aspect. So the successful model always depends upon, as I was telling, the high quality of data set, the right features and system. If you do that, the system can become better at a given task than humans. So always the main challenging task for the any field, whether it can come to the drug discovery also. So you should have a good data set and features. So then algorithms are already available, but still people are working to design better algorithms and all. So that really comes to the computational part. So I was telling that deep learning is one of the very important algorithm which comes under the machine learning. So it is similar to the nervous system. So it is inspired by the structure of the human brain. So most of these now whatever models which are coming, they are trying to use this deep learning algorithm so that you will get a better predictions and all, because humans were what the activities we are able to do, the discovery, the research what we are able to do. So it is just because of the function, wonderful function of this nervous system. So how does it actually works is, if you look at the nervous system and all, so it has the complex multi-layered neural network. So it has multi-layered neural network, and information is transformed from one layer to another over connecting channels. So it's called weighted channels because each of them has a value attached to it. So nervous system, like how it functions is, so it will function in a layers basis. So whenever any decision has to be given by the brain, whenever any certain activity is going on, so whether brain has to take certain amount of decision, so how it actually takes is it will go in a layered basis. So in a layered basis, that means so it will try to filter, eliminate the noise when it comes to the layered basis. So maybe like you want to tell me the simple example where you consider the sieves. So sieves in the sense if you want to filter the certain particle size and all, so we arrange the sieves in a based on this porosity or based on the particle size, we arrange in it. So then you put all the powder, so where it is having different sizes of particle size. So you put into that, so then automatically at every particular sieve, certain particle size of the these crystals or whatever material or any raw material, if you add to that, it will be automatically collected at particular layer. So then you can take the desired one. In the same way, so the when a huge amount of information or when a lot of information comes to the brain, so it will always try to filter on a layered basis. So that so once it comes to the actual solution, you will get it. It will be very significant and all. So this is how the human brain functions. So that is the reason. Like another simple example, if you are able to, if you want to read any text, so which is not written in a neat and legible way, so it is written like if it is like it's not looking very clear, but still, or even if it is inverted, so even if it is inverted 90 degrees, 180 degrees, or 45 degrees, so still we are able to understand what is that alphabet or what is the word written on it. So because it's like a huge amount of information, like if you tell alphabets also, so 26 alphabets are there. So among that, so our brain will, by looking at the size and shape of it, how it is looks like, so it will try to filter them on a layered basis, and it will tell, okay, like this is the alphabet A. So just because of it is matching with the size and shape of it, so it will try to filter at every layer, and it will give you one single answer. So that is the way the how the nervous system it works on it. So the layered basis. So this layered basis, if you try to mimic the same thing in the computer machine, so then you may get a better answers. So that is the reason deep learning is one of the very significant algorithm where many of these machine learning models, they are trying to take use of it. Yeah. So data scientists need massive amount of training data. So for that, so as I was telling, when you want to predict what alphabet it is not looking very clear and all. So you need to feed first 26 alphabets. So you need to know the dimensions of it, size and shape of it, how it looks and all. So once you give the data, then only it can tell what alphabet it is. So if you are not feeding the brain, what are the 26 alphabets? So then your brain cannot tell you, so which is the alphabet which is written on the board or somewhere. So for that, you need to give a data. So in the same way, so when you want to identify, let us say the drug discovery and all. So if you want to identify the right molecule, so you need to feed a large amount of data related to it. So then huge number of parameters have to be considered in order for the solution to be accurate. So now this alphabet thing is a very simple example. It has to locate only the one alphabet among the 26. So but still among the 26 also you have to give the sufficient information related to each and every alphabet. Then only you can identify what alphabet it is. So deep learning algorithms are quite the hype now. For example, speech recognition system as Google Assistant and Amazon Alexa. So these are the very good examples we can tell. So Google Alexa and Amazon. So Amazon Alexa. So we regularly use that voice mode and all. So like there are different slangs in are there. So even if you come across the different states or different countries, so everyone voice will be different. So if you want to tell open Google means, so the slang which comes from every person, it varies from one to another, but still it is able to read and understand that you are asking to open Google. So that means, so how much amount of information or how much amount of data is fed into the, or it is programmed into the algorithm, you can just understand. So when it comes to different country, there the slang will be different. So within the country also, so among different states and different people, so different kinds of people, different ages of people will be speaking. So all these things will be, that means you can just understand how much amount of data to be programmed into that, so that it can recognize what the person is speaking. So, but still, even after all these things, there is no perfect algorithm that works equally well for all the tasks. So only thing, like if you want the machine to function or if you want to create that artificial intelligence system, so you just have to concentrate, or it is a very most important thing which is required is the three features what I said. So data set, the features, and the third one is algorithm. So if you are able to generate these three parameters, then definitely your machine can help assist you in doing or in solving the large amount of data and all. Okay. So that is about the basic outline of artificial intelligence and all. So now we'll see the drug discovery process. So our topic is like how to adopt this, how we can adopt the artificial intelligence in the drug discovery. So the traditional drug discovery, what we have been doing all this, it involves a lot of a series of steps are there. So where it takes a huge amount of time. So still we know that even after this much amount of technology is advanced, but still we take 12 to 15 years for the drug to come into the market. So it involves a series of steps. So because of the technology is advancing, so it has to cross each and every step. The number of steps we have to prove is becoming more and more because of the technology. So earlier we were not focusing on each and every step, but now because of the technology, the number of steps is also increasing. So like if you talk about the drug discovery process, so once the disease or disorder is identified, so we need to study what are the pathways which are happening, which are occurring inside that. So what is the components are there, like which is actually function, what function is affecting in the process of disease or disorder. So what is the organs involved in it? What are the pathways involved in it? So then in the pathways, what are the messengers which are there in that? So then we need to see, so which is the actual switch point where we need to put off that, so that we can do the prevention or for the treatment of particular disease or disorder. So this is the part where the molecular biologists will do. So they will identify the right pathway, they will identify the right target, and it will give us, they will give us to, so that we can work on it. So that is about the molecular biologist. So once the validated pathway or validated target comes, so then it comes to the medicinal chemist. So medicinal chemist will try to understand the structure of the target. So and based on that, so they will try to design certain molecules. They will try to understand what is the active pocket present in it. So what is the chemistry of the active pocket involved in it. So based on the chemistry, so then we'll start designing the molecule, so where it will work. So then we'll design the molecule, set of molecules, and we'll do certain level of screening process. Like now we have these computational tools are there. So different computational tools. So by molecular docking or pharmacophore modeling, QSR and all. So now the scientists are trying to incorporate that artificial intelligence into it, so that it can make the right decision to avoid all this, or to differentiate false positives and false negatives. So once we do the preliminary level of screening, so then we'll go for the, that we call it as a hit molecules. So we will filter and we'll identify a set of hit molecule. So these hit molecules will again try to go for the in vitro studies and all. We'll do some amount of experimental studies, and they will identify the lead molecule. So they will do certain preclinical studies and all, and they will try to identify what are the pharmacokinetic parameters and all. And then, so if it suits all these ADMET, absorption, metabolism, distribution, excretion, and toxicity, then so based on these, they will further go for the lead optimization. So they will try to improve the safety and efficacy of the molecule, and then once again they'll go for the preclinical, and they'll calculate. So after this, then they'll go for the clinical studies and all. So there it will go in different phases. So in a different group of people, so based on the population size and all, different phases will be there. And then, so once it clears all these phases, so then they will be released into the market. So there are a lot of hiccups are there, and duration, the time it takes and all. So it's a 10 to 12 years, and a lot of money is involved in it. So now we can cut down all this process and all. So just by incorporating the artificial intelligence. Yeah, so if we just look at the pipeline of the drug discovery, you can see over here. So just because now the technology is advanced. We are using all these computational tools, and we are trying to see virtually. We are trying to see what is the behavior of the molecule in the active pocket of particular target. So we'll just see how well the molecule is sitting in the active pocket, how whether it is complementary to the active pocket or not. So whether it is complementary, then what kind of interactions it is forming. So as I said, so first we need to understand the chemistry of the active pocket. So then to understand the chemistry of active pocket, that means how much hydrophobicity is there in the pocket, how much hydrophilicity is there in the pocket, what kind of charge is there, whether it is positively charged, negatively charged. So based on that, you can design the molecule where it automatically go and fit in that. So if the pocket is more hydrophobic and if your molecule is more hydrophilic, then it cannot sit in the pocket. So according to the requirements of the pocket, you have to design the molecule. So once you run, there are large amount of chemicals, chemical structures are available. So now if you see as per the, some of the literature, some of the studies, they say that the chemical space which is available is around 10 to the power of 60 molecules are there. You can just imagine how much big figure it is. So among the 10 to the power of 60 molecules, so if you give, and it is difficult for the human brain to interpret or to analyze, so which is the right molecule for this particular target. So now if you are able to incorporate what is your requirements to the system, so it will just screen the 10 to the power of 60 molecules in just a few days, and it will tell you this is the right molecule for your system for this particular target. But still we are trying to screen some millions of molecules using this computational tool, and we are identifying set of molecules, and then we are going to the preliminary in vitro screening and all, and then we do some ADMET, pharmacokinetic studies in the animals, and we try to come up with the lead molecule. So then we'll undergo for lead optimization, and then we'll do certain synthesis, we'll synthesize some molecules. So after synthesizing, then again we'll go for the ADMET screening, the pharmacokinetic, and we'll see the safety and efficacy of the molecule, and we'll come up with the clinical candidate. So that molecule will go for the clinical trials, and then so we'll filter this. So this is the actual traditional process what nowadays which has been going on. Yeah. So these are the different stages I was telling. So before it comes to the preclinical clinical setup, so we need to go for the first screening and hit identification. So we need to understand what is the target structure and all. So then based on understanding the target structure, so we'll give the databases to the these computational softwares which are there. So these computational softwares will filter the molecules where which are having complementary to the active pocket, and it will give you that hit molecules. So once these hit molecules comes, then we'll go for the preliminary in vitro testing and all, or ADMET screening to identify which is the lead molecule. So lead molecule, that means, so which is the basic structure or what kind of substituents are required. So there, from the hit to lead identification, we'll do that structure activity relationship. So structure activity relationship means we are trying to identify or investigate the relationship between the structure and the activity. So here, when we talk about the chemistry, so one point you have to remember is that chemical structure is responsible for every property. So whether it is a physical property, chemical property, or any biological activity or any toxicity. So everything is because of the structure. If you are able to understand the role of the chemical structure, so how the chemical structure has to be, how it has to be located, what kind of substance should be there. So if you are able to understand the chemical structure, you can modify everything. That means every property can be modified, because every property, if a certain drug is causing toxicity, means that is just because of the structure. So you have to alter the structure in such a way that it will not give that intermediate, so that it will not cause that particular toxicity or any that metabolism effect. So any property, whether you want to relate any property, so you just have to look at the structure. So you modify the structure in such a way that it will not give that particular intermediate, so that you can you can design a better molecule. So that is how where it actually looks in that lead optimization stage. So you need to understand these all parameters, the structure-activity relationship. So during this transformation process from lead identification, lead optimization, you have to focus more on the structure, how well this structure is sitting in the active pocket. So what is the complementarity? So these all aspects, if you thoroughly understand, so then you can come up with a better molecule. So after lead optimization, then we'll go for the preclinical testing, so to understand the safety and efficacy of the molecule before going to the clinical trial. So you need to know what is the metabolic pathway or the excretion pathway of a drug molecule before it goes to the clinical trial, because there will be certain amount of similarities there in the enzymes, so where how the drug is being metabolized in the animal. So we need to know what kind of metabolites are coming in the drug. So once you administer the drug, before it get excreted, so what all the intermediates which are being metabolized, what are the intermediates are being coming. So what is the metabolic pathway of the drug, how, in what form it is being excreted. So you need to know the structure and what is the safety of that particular intermediate. So we need to understand. So that is actually undergoes in this preclinical testing. Yeah. So now if we talk about this computational tool, the design aspect, the very familiar and the known thing is lock and key theory. So where the lock and key theory tells that is, the better you understand the design of the lock, the better you can design the key. The first thing is you should always try to understand the design of the lock. So once you know about the design of the lock, then you can design the key in a very short span. So you can take a simple example, the key maker and all. So if you take him to the, if you give the key to the lock maker and if you ask him to make a key, then you can just simply, you can easily make it off, because he will just try to see what is the size and shape of the lever, how many levers are there. According to that, he will just make it off. Now, if you're not taking the lock and if you just ask him to make a key, you can just understand how many times he has to go back and check. So he'll make a key and he'll come and check whether the lock is opening or not. Otherwise, again he go back, again he make another key, again he comes back and he check it. So if you don't understand the design of the lock, so it takes more, obviously it will take more time for you to design a better key, right? So there are different approaches are there. So one of the very commonly seen approaches is repurposing. So before, when you want to design a new key, so first you check whether the existing keys are there, existing drugs are there, so whether they will fit into this lock or not. So there are plenty of examples are there where we are using repurposed drugs for the newly identified or the old diseases or disorders. So if you are not, if it is not working, then you can go for the designing a new key. So where you understand the lock and see whether that key is, where it has to fit into that particular lock, and it has to open the lock so that you will get a, the function, the disease will get cured or treated. No. So that is where you can understand the lock and key. The main, so what we have to understand here over is, so first you have to understand more about the design of the lock. So better you understand, the better you can design the key. So right away, whenever we want to design, make a discovery for any particular target, so try to start from the molecular pathway. So what is the actual pathway involved in it? What is the pathway? Then you see what is the target proteins involved in it. So whether it is the right target. So always try to select the target which is validated. So validated means, so maybe any other companies are working on it, or any other companies molecules are there in the clinical trials or preclinical trial or in the discovery stage. So because the companies are working on it means, that itself indicates that the target is validated. So then you always try to see, select the target where the molecules are there, so that you will get some amount of information from the literature. So then you try to understand the structure. You look at the sequence. So what is the sequence of the target? So what is the sequence of active pocket? So read that and the what kind of amino acids are there in the active pocket. So we know the classification of the amino acids. So positively charged, negatively charged, polar amino acids, non-polar amino acids. So based on that, you try to see, and you can, there are many softwares are there, we can visualize the active pocket in a three-dimensional way. So then you will get a picture. So where the hydrophobic pocket is there, where the hydrophilic is there. So accordingly, you design the molecule, you give an outline of the structure, and then so you can give it to the databases for collecting the substructures of it. So that will give you, like, you should always know the direction. So instead of throwing stones in the dark room and searching for it, so you go in a direction, proper directed manner, so that you can come up to the solution. Yeah, so this is the target. Like you can always see the three-dimensional way of the representation of the pocket and see which molecule come and fits in that. So whether the molecule is fitting in that, whether there is a complementarity between the surfaces. So then whether it is forming any interactions are there, whether those interactions are stable. So what kind of interactions are there? And when you look, the molecule is sitting in that. So nearby, what are the amino acid residues are there? So that you can put some kind of substituents to it, so that it will form some interactions with the amino acid. It will involve or interact with the other amino acids also. So in this way, you can identify the right molecule where it will sit in the active pocket. So now what are the limitations? So this is the how the traditional approach is going on. So now what is the limitations? So what is the need of bringing artificial intelligence? The reason is a huge amount of funding is required to take a drug candidate from preclinical to clinical. So we have seen that what are the lot many of steps are there, and we need to do a lot of testing. So we need to do a lot of synthesize testing in vitro, and then we have to go for the clinical animal testing, and then we again, if at all if it is showing any toxicity, again we may have to come back, and again we need to look at the structure, modify the structure, and again you come to the in vitro, again you come to the preclinical animal testing, and then you confirm. So it will take almost 8 to 10 years to do all this process. So even after doing all this, but still we are finding that lack of efficacy of drug due to the unique needs of each patient as well as the specific genetic background. So even if you see, like most of these drugs are there with side effects. Even after undergoing a series of steps with this much amount of time, after investing a huge amount of money, but still we are finding some amount of toxicity or side effects across different people because of their different medical history or the genetic background, as it is mentioned. So now, how all these problems can be solved by adopting artificial technology, artificial intelligence in the drug discovery process. Yeah. So I was telling the main important thing we have to understand is, of course, we are almost trying to do the similar thing by the one of the important module, that is quantitative structure activity relationship. So it is almost similar to the. So what actually we do it in the artificial intelligence in drug discovery. So what we actually do is, so we are trying to do, like it's related to the mathematics and biology, quantitative structure activity relationship. So we are trying to quantify the relationship between the structure and the biological activity. It is one of the methods to identify the correlation between chemical structure of series of compounds and a particular chemical or biological process. So hypothesis behind the concept is similar structure of physical chemical properties have similar activity. So I was telling the structure is responsible for every property. So now you need to collect a set of structures. So what is actually happening over here is, so you need to collect a set of structures, so which are reported for this particular target, right? So you need to collect the set of structures which are reported for that particular target. So you need to have the IC50 values of that particular individual structure for the target. So you take a set of structures and IC50 values, and then you try to predict the properties, calculate the properties of these structures. So what is actually the QSAR means? So though we look the structure, chemical structure in the way it is represented in the atoms, but if you look in the QSAR point of view, what is actually the chemical structure is nothing but the properties are joined together, which is required for that particular target. It is not the atoms are joined. The chemistry point of view, atoms are joined together to show that to represent as a drug molecule. But if you look at the QSAR point of view, what is actually is the properties are joined together, and you have to understand that no two keys will open one lock. So for every lock, there will be one key. So same concept applies over here. So there, like one drug has to be like the proteins are designed in such a way, like target proteins are there. So none of the protein will have identical sequence. So though the amino acids are only 20 or 21, but still, so every protein will have its independent, the sequence is independent. So there won't be any similarity will be there. So the same way, none of the two proteins have identical structure, identical active pocket. That means the proteins are so selective and so specific. So the active pocket is so selective and so specific. So if you try to understand the active pocket, you can design a better molecule where it will go and bind only to for that particular target. So that means, so you need to understand what properties are required to inhibit that particular target. So what properties? So that we have experimentally identified values, IC50 values. You take a set of structures, take a set of IC50 values, and you convert these structures in the point of into properties value. You give some values for that properties, and you see correlate with the IC50 value. So definitely you will find some mathematical equation where, so first you will understand what are the properties are having, which properties are having significance on the IC50 value, which properties are having influence on that. So these some statistical tools are there where it will help you. So if you give a set of properties and if you give the IC50 value, so it will see which property is having direct influence on the IC50 value, and then tell you these are the properties. So every property will not have influence. onto the IC50 value. So it will identify the selected properties that are having direct influence, and it will give you a mathematical equation. So where from that equation you can, so when you have an unknown molecule, you fit that unknown molecule into this equation and see whether it is suitable to it or not. So then you can identify the same thing. So here the crucial task is identifying the ligands with experimentally measured values. So the only criteria is you need to have good number of molecules with their IC50 value. And the another important thing is your IC50 value should be in different ranges. So different ranges in the sense, so you need to have, like, let us say, so we know that nanomolar activity, if at all if any compound is having nanomolar activity, let us say 1 nanomolar, 2 nanomolar IC50 value, that means the molecule is very potent. So if it is having IC50 value 100 micromolar or 200 micromolar, so that means it requires more amount of dose to inhibit that particular target. So it is less potent. That means you need to have a different ranges. So nanomolar, then single digit micromolar, double digit micromolar, triple digit micromolar. Again the same is single digit nanomolar, double digit and triple digit. So at different ranges if you have, so it will try to link it to the structure. So what properties is giving a molecule single digit nanomolar activity? What properties is giving a molecule single digit micromolar or double digit micromolar? Definitely there will be some relationship will be there. So now that relationship will be identified and the mathematical equation will tell you. So these properties are essential for a molecule to design or to identify a molecule with single digit nanomolar activity. So for that you need to have, this is the important point is, should be of adequate chemically diversity to have large deviation in the activity. So you need to have a deviation in the activity so that the study will identify so which properties are required for good activity. So it identify and determine molecular descriptors associated with various structural and physicochemical properties of the molecule under study. So this is what actually QSR, which we are doing it now. So it is the extension of it comes under artificial intelligence. So what is this molecular descriptor? So that property we call it as a molecular descriptor. So it is the final result of a logic and mathematical procedure which transforms chemical information encoded with a symbolic representation of molecule into a useful number or the result of some standardized experiment. So these scientists will tell that, so the property, these, as I was telling, molecule, if you look at the molecule from QSI point of view, so these are nothing but the properties are joined together. So these properties, every property will have some number, that means it is represented in the form of a number. These properties are joined together and it is formed, a molecule is formed in that. So what are these descriptors? So there are plenty of descriptors are there. So some of them which very common, which we are familiar is molecular weight, lipophilicity, hydrogen bond donor, acceptor, topology, connectivity, geometry, stereochemistry. So now, according to the literature, so there are, like, you can tell that more than 2000 molecular descriptors can be calculated for a single structure. So if you give the structure, you can get some 2000 or 3000. So now that 2D, 3D, 4D, 5D QSR is there. That means you can calculate the descriptors. So plenty of descriptors are available. So good descriptors should characterize molecular properties important for molecular interaction. So there are plenty of properties are there. So you just have to give these properties and the IC50 value to the machine. So then it will try to tell you so which properties are important or which are the significant for your to inhibit that particular target. So some of the free softwares are there. So web servers are there like Alva, Desk, Paddle, Dragon, and all. So these web servers or softwares are there where it will give you thousands of properties for a molecule. So discover correlation between molecular descriptors and biological activity. So that can explain the variation in activity in the data. So test the statistical stability and predictive power of the QSI model. So goal here is to create a molecular fingerprint for each molecule that relates to its activity. So you need to know the fingerprint of it. So once you know the fingerprint of it, then you can play with that. So you can see which type of molecules will fit to that and see. So based on that, you can design a better molecule. So essential part of the drug optimization. So we want to optimize the drug. So QSR strategy is one of the very important, and it plays a significant role in optimizing the drug structure. The success of any model always depends upon the choice of molecular descriptor and ability to generate the appropriate mathematical relationship between descriptors and biological activity of interest. So you need to know, as I was telling, there are thousands of descriptors are there, but you need to identify the right descriptor which is having a direct relationship with the biological activity. So if you are able to identify these properties which are having direct influence on the activity, so then you can always design a better molecule. So these kind of information you have to feed. So what is the importance of discussing this aspect over here is, so you need to feed all these information, this related information to the algorithm. So when you're making algorithm in artificial intelligence, so you need to provide this information so that so it will tell you what is the right molecule. Yeah. So that is about the background. So what kind of information is required for this? So now why AI and drug discovery? So we have seen so what is the limitations of the traditional drug discovery in terms of time or in terms of money or even after the safety and efficacy of the drug molecule. So because AI, it has the ability to see the patterns and structures and interactions that medicinal chemists may not. So as I was telling, the structure is responsible for every property, and we know that lock and key theory. So only there will be always an ideal key, one key will be there which can open the lock properly. So just because of that, we are missing the selectivity and specificity. Because of that, we are able to see all these interactions and all drug interactions and all whatever interactions, the toxicity we are seeing is because we are lacking the complete information on the selectivity and specificity. So if we can focus on that, and we have a large chemical space, so we, as I was telling, there are almost 10 to the power of 60 molecules are there. So if we have a large chemical space, we have the technology to understand the protein structure or the target structure. So now if you try to incorporate all this particular data into the machine, then it can solve your problem. So it can solve the specificity and selectivity, the safety and efficacy, and the time and the money. You can bring all together into this and you can just speed up the drug discovery process. It has the ability to speed up the process of finding a drug candidate. So can generate candidates 4 times as quickly as more traditional method. We can also find ways to synthesize the drug candidates. So you can use this artificial intelligence at every step. So you can use in the selection of the molecule, you can use it in this preclinical, I mean the preliminary screening, in vitro screening. You can use it in the preclinical testing. You can use it in the synthesis of the molecules. You can even predict how the molecule is going to behave in the clinical setting. So at every step we can use that. So only thing is whatever you want the machine to do, so the related information has to be given to the related data should be given to the system. So once you give the sufficient data, then it will try to correlate. We will just discuss in further. So it sounds great, but what is required? So here the AI has to integrate biology, chemistry, and clinical trials. So as I was telling, what is required for the model is, so you need a data set, you need a feature, you need an algorithm. So now this data set, this feature, algorithm, so the data which is pertaining to biology, chemistry, and clinical trial. So related to these three, so you have to integrate the data of biology, chemistry, and clinical trial and give it to that system in data set, features, and algorithm. So then it will solve the problem for you. So it is very easy to say, but it is very tough to give all the data which is related to biology, chemistry, and clinical trial because the number of parameters are there. So it has to solve the parameters in the biology aspect, chemistry aspect, and the clinical trial aspect. So then only it will give you the molecule which is safer. So if anything is missing, then you will not get the right output. So needs to have something to drug in the first place. So first you need to have a data, so where it will fulfill all this biology, chemistry, and clinical trial. So into the biology, that means so where the molecule has to sit into the target. So you need to give the information about the target, complete information of the target, complete information of the active pocket. So what kind of flexibility is there in the pocket, how it will behave when the molecule come and sit in the active pocket, how it is going to behave, what kind of conformations it is going to take place. So whether they are stable or not with respect to energy, everything you have to give. And then the chemistry. So chemistry part means how the molecule, what kind of molecule can sit in the active pocket, what kind of atom should be there, what kind of interactions it has to form. So whether those interactions are stable, because interactions means between the protein and the target protein and the ligand. The interaction has to form it is just between the atoms. So you need to know what kind of atoms, the availability of electrons, the bonding, the type of bonding. It should not be a covalent bonding. So these information should be given with respect to chemistry. And coming to clinical trial. So clinical trials, the information is plenty. So you need right from the administration. So we need to give it the absorption, the parameters related to absorption, distribution, metabolism, excretion, toxicity. So how, what, once the molecule enters into the body, so what all it will come across. So you have to, what environment. So when it goes to the system, once it starts moving through the system, it has to undergo, it has to cross different environments. So like different environment in the sense pH. So once it enters into the stomach, so there will be acidic pH. So once it comes to the blood system, the pH is different. So it's a very complex environment and it will come across so many things. So all these parameters should be given to the system. So you need to integrate everything and then only you can expect that your algorithm or your artificial intelligence model will give you the right molecule. So you need to have a data about potential compounds. Existing compounds are rarely linked with clinical data. So one of the biggest limitations, theoretically we are saying that, so if you put everything, it will give, but you need to have a data of a potential compound. Potential compound, that means it is very potential. It is free from all these toxicities or side effects. So it's a very good compound. Clinically, it is very safe. So it is not showing any side effects. Then for that particular target, like that, you need to have a data for every particular target of a disease and disorder. Once you have the complete information related to biology, chemistry, and clinical trials, so this is the preliminary thing. Once you have the data, because you need to have a target. That means you need to fix certain target for this. So without the target, you cannot reach there. So this is existing compounds are rarely linked with the clinical data because even though the drugs are there in the market, but still they are showing some toxicity or side effects to for people of different regions or different countries. So that also should not be there. So filling gaps in existing data sets costs money and it takes time. So first you need to start filling the data. You need to start collecting the data required for that so that you can design an algorithm for this particular and then you can come up with then you can use this algorithm, artificial intelligence model for designing new molecules for that particular target in a disease, respective disease or disorder. So the traditional, what is the difference here? If you see the difference between traditional versus AI-based drug discovery. So traditional means, so it is target driven. So whenever you want to, like traditionally, what we do now, the drug discovery process. So we look at the structure of the target. We'll try to understand the target. So we look at the pocket. What is the chemistry of the pocket? And then we use different computational tools. And then based on that, we'll do the preliminary screening. We'll take the databases and all we'll do. But when it comes to the AI based, it is completely data driven. Data in the sense we need to have the properties pertaining to, as it's in the previous slide, chemistry, biology, and clinical trials. So you need to give only the data, chemical values. So if you give the values, then it will read. So it is the target, the question of the target will not come under this AI based. So it works traditionally, it works well for easily druggable targets that have a well-defined structure and whose interactions inside the cell are understood in detail. So it works very well when you have the complete information about the target, the structure and all. So we are going to analyze, you can see how it is going to behave a cell and all. So because you are doing everything here, that means, so once you identify the molecule, so then you will do the in vitro test and you will see how the molecule is behaving in the cell by looking at the results of it. And then you will go for the animal and then you will see all the pharmacokinetic properties or the safety, efficacy, everything you are going to visualize it every year. When it comes to the AI, you are not going to see anything. You don't know how the molecule is behaving inside the cell. You don't know how the molecule is behaving inside the animal. So you are leaving completely to the algorithm and machine learning. You are asking machine to tell everything. So now, in the traditional, extremely limited due to the complex nature of cellular interactions as well as limited knowledge of intricate cellular pathways. You can understand this point here. So now, according to the traditional way, you are designing the molecule, you are visualizing inside the cell how it is going to behave in the in vitro testing, and you are seeing in the animal how it is going to behave, and then you are going to clinical trial, you are seeing everything, but still you are finding a complex issues. Still you are finding some side effects or toxicity in a certain group of people and all. But still, even after seeing everything, you are having a limitations in the traditional way. So now when it comes to the AI-based, identify compounds that could bind to undruggable target proteins whose structures are not defined. So without seeing all these also, you can design a molecule under the AI-based. So overall, the predictive set of compounds that can be easily identified with AI in a relatively small amount of time and a quarter of the cost of traditional methods. So according to AI based, if you are able to provide all the sufficient information and data to the model, so you can predict the better molecule or the best molecule within a short span of time with less amount of expenditure. So definitely it is having advantages. Artificial in AI, if you are adopting AI in drug discovery, it's having huge advantages. But the only thing is, limitation is the sufficient data to be given. So we are lacking in that data. So now, because as the technology is advancing, so if you are able to try to get those data and fill the data, then definitely you can utilize those technology and you can do so many things. So now, as I was telling, there's a huge amount of information is available in the public database. So these are some of the chemical public databases where anyone can access. So lot of chemical molecules are there, which are available. Some databases have some ICFT values also. So even we have ChemDB is there. So where that database will have, it is having some ICFT values also given. So each database is having its own advantages and disadvantages. Yeah. So what are the pros of AI? Advantage is AI offers hope to cut costs and time to results, ability to incorporate real world evidence from multiple scores, so it improves the study design. It can help determine which patients are most likely to benefit and inform value or pricing. So you can go, if you able to provide the sufficient data and design a model, you can go to an extent where, so what kind of treatment can be given to a patient. So you can go for personalized medicine can also be done. So that is like a huge amount. The scope is very huge. The advantages are very huge. You cannot even think. So it is beyond. But you need to provide all the data to it. So if you want to make use of it, we need to provide the data. So what is the drawbacks? So algorithm should clearly lay out the criteria. So you have to provide data pertaining to biology, chemistry, and clinical trials. So cost of supercomputing and high throughput screening has decreased, but pipelines still require significant investment. So you need to have sufficient information for that particular target in that disease or disorder. So then only you can cut down all this high throughput screening. Everything can be cut down. So now, like nowadays, most of them are asking to not to go for the preclinical. So make use of the these computational tools and try to avoid the preclinical setting and all. So at least you can cut down the preliminary thing. So you don't have to do everything, even the synthesis also. So earlier people used to synthesize at least some thousands of molecules to come up and identify the lead molecule. So now that thousands has come down to hundreds at least. Definitely, it has come down to hundreds. You can make use of this computational tool and at least you can cut down that. But now if you start adopting this AI, that hundreds you can bring it down to tens maybe. So virtual clinical trials are just, of course, predictions made by computer have to be verified by scientists to make sure they are valid. This is definitely a valid point. And virtual clinical trials are just that virtual. What degree of oversight is required to eventually replace early clinical trials with AI-based virtual clinical trials? So though we talk all these things, whether, so what is the correlation between the virtual clinical trials and the actual clinical trial? So we need to bring that, we need to investigate that point also. So what should be held responsible for a misdiagnosis or a wrong treatment to the patient when the treatment is administered based on AI-based predictions? So who will take the responsibility? So when if the treatment is given, like if any error happens, any mistake happens, who is going to take the responsibility of it? Yeah, so what's next? So what's next is, so all these technology companies, drug discovery companies, biology companies, these companies have to come forward and they have to work together. So all these technology and drug discovery and biology, so these companies, if they come forward and if they work together, so definitely we can bring up new molecules under artificial intelligence based drug discovery. So that is about it. So before going to discuss the case study, I just want to know if anybody has any questions. I would like to answer a few questions.
Akshay, who was receiving the questions?
Not yet. We haven't received any questions yet. But people who have few questions can raise their hands. so that I can give them permission to speak.
Sir, you are almost done with this case study. Is the problem that you want to pose as a hackathon problem, or
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. This is the case study I want to tell, like how model is being generated and how the drug discovery is done for this. So I'm just discussing one research article. So next is the problem. So just as a reference,
because I
I'm
think we
giving
can
as a
have
reference.
some of the questions raised during the panel discussion as well.
Okay.
So maybe we can continue.
Yeah, fine. That's fine. Okay. So we'll just see a small case study. So where they have done comparing and validating a machine learning model for Mycobacterium tuberculosis drug discovery. So for TB drug discovery, they have just generated a model. They have used the applications of this AI and they have generated a model, so, and they have predicted the activity of the molecule. So we'll just see what they have done. So this is a reference of that particular study article. It is published in Molecular Pharmaceutics of ACS publisher. Yeah, so what they have actually done is, so they have collected a pool of compounds from the public databases. So they have collected the set of molecules which are reported for tuberculosis. So here, I want to make it clear that they have not done any specific to particular target. They have taken only for the Mycobacterium tuberculosis, the organism. So which target, which pathway this molecule is inhibiting, or which target, that is not considered. So it is generalized study. They have done it for the Mycobacterium tuberculosis. So they have collected the data of compounds with their IC50 values. So some amount of data they have collected from the public databases, some amount of data they have collected from the published literature. So altogether they have pulled almost around 18,886 molecules. So from the public databases, from the published literature, they have collected. So this is the number. So this number they have categorized into 4 sets. So there is 100 nanomolar active, 1 micromolar, 10 micromolar, and cutoffs. That means beyond that. So I was telling that when I was discussing about the QSAR. So when you want to derive a relationship, so you need to have a set of molecules at different IC50 value ranges, because you need to know so what properties are essential to understand or to get a molecule with single digit nanomolar. So what properties are giving a molecule a double digit nanomolar or a double digit micromolar. So that is the reason for dividing these. So once they collected all the molecules, they are categorized into individual data sets, so that it will the model will understand, because you need to know that you need to give a data set, you need to give a features. So remember that at the beginning I said you need to give a data set, features, and the algorithm. So now data set is about all the chemical structures, the properties of the molecule, the physicochemical properties, the descriptors as I was telling. So whatever 2000 or 3000 descriptors of individual molecule and their IC50 values at different ranges. So once you give all this particular data to the system, yeah, and then so another thing is you need to know that there is again the training set and the test set, that is validation set. So whenever you make any model, you should always try to validate it first. So they have categorized into training set and the validation set. So all these molecules, so all these ranges of molecules also should be there in both training set and validation set. So that means validation set also should predict the molecule. It should also differentiate the active molecule and inactive molecule. So whenever you're trying to build the training set and validation set, so all types of activity based molecules should be there in both the sets, so that it will understand so what properties are required for it, and your validation set should identify both active and inactive molecule. So based on this, they have taken the validation set, some 1171 molecule, and then they have built the training set. They have built some model using statistical tools or these machine learning algorithms like logistic regression, AdaBoost, Bayesian trees, random forest, Bernoulli Bayesian, support vector machine, deep learning. So these are different algorithms pertaining to programs and all. So they have used and they have predicted the model. They have identified the model. So and then once the model is built using this training set, so then they have used this validation set and they have predicted the, of course, they validated the model. So once the model is validated, so that model they have used it to predict the activity of unknown compounds. So they have used different programming, that is different algorithms for generating a model. So just to understand, so which model is giving, of course, even if you look at the statistical models also, there are different approaches are there. So similarly, they have used different ones and they could identify that this Bernoulli-Neve Bayesian. So this has given the prediction level is bit higher for this particular approach. For this particular set of compounds, so they could identify that. So this algorithm is giving accuracy, like better accuracy. So they have what they have done is they have taken the 18,000 plus molecules and they have given this RDK descriptor. So this web software they have used and they have generated 196 algorithm descriptor. So they have generated both two-dimensional, three-dimensional descriptors for all those molecules. They have also used ToxPrint. So it is a set of publicly available chemical structures relevant to toxicity. So they have generated descriptors related to chemical structures. They have also generated descriptors which are pertaining to toxicity. And also they have generated simple descriptors, which are very familiarly known. These LOCP, that is hydrophobicity, molecular weight, number of rotatable bond, number of rings, number of aromatic rings in the sense it includes both heterocyclic and aromatic. Only aromatic, hydrogen bond donors, acceptors, molecular fractional polar surface area. So that means altogether they have generated three types of descriptors. So one is two-dimensional, three-dimensional descriptors. One is pertaining to toxicity, and other one is simple descriptors. So they have generated three types of descriptors, and they have used all the statistical tools, that is algorithms, and they have first they have used classic machine learning methods. So these are the classic CML method, and they used some Python software for doing all these calculations and all. And they have also used deep neural networks, that is deep learning method algorithm, and they have generated models. So they have generated different models, and the criteria they have used is 80% training set and 20% validation set they have used. And they have generated different models using these machine learning algorithm. So what is the outcome? So outcome what there is Bayesian model is performing reasonably well at 1 micromolar cutoff for predicting activity. So this model with the provided information, so this model is able to identify the molecule, the IC value up to 1 micromolar. So it is showing reasonably well. I mean, the accuracy is still 1 micromolar. So it is not went to the nanomolar level. And the limitations of this study is, so they focused on drug sensitive Mycobacterium tuberculosis and not specifically model drug resistant. So this particular data, what they have collected, they have seen only for the drug sensitive. That means they are not considered for the drug resistant strains. The less data in the literature that would enable building machine learning models against drug resistant strains. So they couldn't get the sufficient data to consider these drug resistant parameters also. So critical factor is the continual updating of models with new experimental data. So the limitation what they could find is, see now, they have taken these 18,000 plus molecules with their IC50 values and they have built a model. Now tomorrow, let us say that you get 100 molecules. So now they couldn't update this 18,000 to, they couldn't add these 100 molecules to that model so that the accuracy of the model will improve. That means they couldn't find to update and upgrade the model. So that is the critical factor is continuous updating of the model. So as soon as you get the sufficient data, you just add to that model so that the accuracy of the model will improve. So that parameter they couldn't make it. That is about the case study. Before finishing, first of all, I would like to thank Department of Biotechnology, the team, RV College of Engineering, and Narayana Vidyalaya so for organizing this wonderful series, webinar series and hackathon to just encourage the students or the researchers to just to upgrade them with the existing knowledge so that they can inculcate or they can introduce these kind of certain aspects into their research methods. With this, I would like to thank also the Ramaya University of Applied Sciences for giving me this opportunity. So before giving you the case study or the problem for the today's thing, so I'd like to answer the questions.
So the panel is open. Not the panel, the Q&A session is quite open. So I don't see any hands raised as of now. So students, please feel free and ask your questions. It's a golden opportunity for all of you. to ask and get your doubts clear. Maybe I am
Maybe you
so
can.
intrigued. Like I just want to start with myself. I want to start a query to doctor and ask a question to him. Yes, sir, while just speaking about QSR studies, you were talking
Akshay,
about.
one second, Akshay.
Yes, ma'am.
Maybe the participants can, put it in the chat box as well,
Yeah,
which
they can. They can.
Dr. Akshay can take it up and then post it across.
Yes, yes. I'm there. I'm just looking at the chat section. So yeah, feel free to.
Sorry to interfere. I could see one question here.
Yes, sir.
Is it possible to predict the log P values of compounds using AI? Because we will not be knowing the hydrophobic or hydrophilic nature of the target before designing. Yeah, definitely we can. Of course, we don't have for just for predicting one property that is log P, we don't have to go for the artificial intelligence. So there are so many freely available softwares are there where you just give the structure and it will tell you the log P of it. Of course, if you want to interpret by using artificial intelligence, so then again you have to take a set of compounds, then you have to experimentally determine the log P of these compounds, and then you have to design an algorithm or a model for that. So if you are able to design the model, then you give the unknown structure to that model and it will tell you the what is the actual log P of that molecule. So you need to, if you want to predict the log P using AI, you have to do all this process. So you need to determine it experimentally for a set of compounds and then it will tell you. Yeah, that is the answer of it. Hope I have answered it.
Sir, I just had one query.
Please, ma'am.
Are there any lead molecules that has come up by using AI in this COVID pandemic? I'm just wondering, like dexamethasone is the one that has been, proved to be saving the lives from, making
Yeah,
decreasing
yeah.
from the ICU and things like that. Is dexamethasone an AI derived product? I mean,
No, no, it's not AI derived product. But still, even the studies are going. But again, if you want to use this AI based thing, because you need to give the sufficient data on this COVID-19 pandemic, of course, COVID-19, the complete structures of this COVID-19 itself are not available. Target proteins are not completely available. But still, a lot of studies has to be done to bring
but
AI
something
into this.
similar to SARS, the earlier pandemic that we had got, something similar to, I mean, can we try? Because there are quite a lot of, from your repository molecules, I could see there are quite a lot of molecules that can be used.
Yes, yes. Essentially, they have
Structurally,
used computational tools. We came up with drug repurposing also is possible. So many drugs have come forward. I mean, they have listed that these drugs can be used for the COVID-19, but still they have to be validated experimentally.
so as of now, no lead molecules has come up from.
For COVID-19, no lead molecule has come. Still, the studies are going on.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
I could see one more question. So about the case study, does it give output based on the given patient's condition or is it general for everyone? So here they have not considered the patients and all. It is just the set of molecules and they have taken only the in vitro data. So only in vitro data only they have taken and they have generated the model. So it is not went to the level of patients. So that is the answer for my question.
Akshay, should we go on to panel discussion or you have some queries to be posted?
Students are not asking anything. Then, sir, I just had one query.
Yeah, please.
If at all IC50 values are not available while we are doing QSR studies, and in such situation, like our analogs might become very less. For
Yes.
example, so in that case, how should we go about it?
No, then we cannot use that approach, QSR approach. Then we may have to go for other like pharmacophore modeling or docking approaches. If you don't have the IC50 values, then you have to go for other approaches. Because QSR IC50 values are must.
Okay. So is there
And
any
again,
way can we predict those IC50 values based on previous
sorry,
studies?
sorry, sir, your voice I couldn't hear.
Is there any way can we predict IC50 values for any given compound?
Yeah, you can predict, but for that you need to have a set of compounds. You need to have a mathematical equation. So once you have the mathematical equation, then you can predict for unknown compound. So for making the mathematical equation, you need to have a set of compounds reported with IC50 values.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. I have one more question. Can you throw some insight to topological descriptor use, if possible? Topological descriptors, yeah. So there are many descriptors are available. So I mean, what kind of information you are looking for? So these if you are able to predict the topological descriptors by using the software, using the topological descriptor, you can build a model and then you can use that model for predicting unknown compounds, predicting the activity of unknown compound. And there are softwares are available to predict topological descriptors. Yes, yes. I have listed there in the slide. Alva is there, AlvaSec is there, and then eDragon is there. How can we use AI-based methods for drug generation based on structure-based drug design? Based on structure-based drug design, see, as I was telling, if you want to build any model using AI, you have to give the data sets, features, and algorithm. So data set means if you want to design a molecule for a particular target, so then you need to give the complete information. You need to give the data complete information about the target, about the structure of the target, the chemical properties of the target. So then you need to give the chemical structures of reported inhibitors with their IC50 values, with their properties. So all this complete information if you give, so then only you can predict the activity of unknown compound using that particular model. You can build a model for anything, any target of a disease or disorder, but you have to provide sufficient information for it. See, in the previous case study, they have given for the TB, for anti-TB. So generally for anti-TB with in vitro values. So if you want to make for a particular target, so then you collect the reported molecules with their IC50 values for that particular target, and you build a model. And then you can use that model to predict for unknown compound. How can AI help in identification of the target? AI help in, so it will definitely help in different levels. So for that, you need to give all the sufficient pathways and all. So what are the molecular pathways involved in it? So what is the influence of it? If you give the complete target related information, then it will help you. So which particular target is having direct influence on that particular function? How much data is sufficient data in research tool? Sorry, my question is not clear.
Sir, in a research field, we don't have enough data. That is why we are doing research, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Now, if we give little data, then it will constrict the research because we have to know all kinds of data only, then it would give sufficient results.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, now how would we know if this data is enough? How would we know if we can stop giving that amount of data? Like we have to know this is the minimum amount of data we are supposed to give, only then it can start.
Yeah, so for that you need to know like what is the objective of the study first. So like in the previous case study, what they have done, they have taken only set of molecules and they have given anti-TB activity, general IC50, not with respect to target, and they have generated a model. So what will be the outcome? What outcome you are expecting from the model? So whether you are expecting the like to give the molecule which is successful in vitro, or you want to see the molecule which is coming out should be successful in vivo, or you want to see the model should give the successful molecule from clinical trial. According to that, you have to give the sufficient data. So if you want to know that, see that your molecule should be successful in vitro, then you give the data which is related to in vitro.
So this is before the clinical trials.
Preclinical.
Okay.
If you want to be a molecule successful in preclinical, then you give the sufficient data for preclinical. Then it will tell you.
Okay, sir. Thanks.
So maybe we can start the panel discussion now. So let's welcome Dr. Raviraj, HOD of Chemistry, and Dr. Swarna to join the panel along with Dr. Manikandan for the panel discussion. So we can just have, just to have an understanding of what Dr. Manikanta had spoken about, and we can discuss on the problem that he is suggesting for the students to solve as a hackathon. So I welcome Dr. Raviraj and Dr. Swarna to the panel.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Swarna speaking. Actually, I'm very much impressed with the QSR studies which Sir has explained. And I was asking about the topological descriptor, the free verse which is available. So it will be very nice if some of the students who are beginning their work, they can learn some of these things by hand, how they can do and how the software is using it, not just using as a black box, and can start the work. It will be very good to initiate the work.
Yeah, for that, I mean, for the student purpose, I could recommend one software that is Build QSAR. It is a very simple and easy one. It's a free software. It almost looks like an Excel sheet only. So you can just start doing this, all these. The students can start working on that software. It's very user friendly. You don't require any explanation on it. So once you just install and explore it, you can easily understand the software. I'll just type it in the chat box also. It is Build QSAR. Oh, I couldn't. Yeah.
I think some of the students which I know that Ganesh and Shilpa, they were interested in this direction. I hope Ganesh and Shilpa would have got some insight from this talk.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Sir, just I had just one query. I was just recently reading and having a discussion with the members at PDB.
So, sorry, sir, your voice is not clear.
Okay, am I
Yeah,
audible?
yes, now it's fine.
Okay. I was just going through one of the papers that was published in Nature recently and was having a discussion about my people who are there at PDB.
Okay.
So eventually we are starting to think that maybe lock and key model is not the right way to see, because few experiments suggest that interaction happens over a period of time. Like if the same
Yeah,
interaction is not happening now, if you
Yes.
give it some time period to happen, if the
Yes.
condition prevails for a longer period, there is a way that induced fit happens.
Definitely, definitely.
So in this, when this variable comes into picture, the whole protein-protein interaction and protein-ligand interaction, the whole point, now there is a whole new added complexity to this.
Yes, yes.
So what should be our thought process in working? Initially, my understanding was to, while we doing molecular dynamic simulation to increase the time,
Yes.
eventually we were stopping at 100 nanoseconds all these years. Now we are talking about 200 nanoseconds and pharma companies are talking
Yeah,
about
yeah.
500 nanoseconds.
One microsecond. Some journals are asking 1 microsecond also.
So how far can biology or computational biology be there, can provide inputs before we can go to lab?
Yeah, so one thing is definitely docking, only just by docking spores, you cannot consider this molecule as a hit molecule or something, because docking, whatever process we do is a rigid docking. So definitely we have to go for the dynamics. So from the dynamics only, you will try to understand the flexibility is given. Whenever flexibility is given, what kind of mutations are being happening, mutations, conformations. So what is the level of conformations which is being taking place? So there only we'll try to understand. So you need to consider the binding energy also. So that's why nowadays, most of the papers, they ask us only molecular dynamics is not sufficient. So you have to integrate molecular dynamics with energy, MMGPSA or MMPPSA approach. So during the process of confirmations, you will study. So what kind of confirmations are happening, whether they are deviations, energy level ranges, we need to understand and interpret. So based on that, if the deviations are not too much, so then you can consider that. And again, the interactions also plays a major role over here. So the flexibility with energy calculations and the interactions will definitely give us some direction.
Sir,
What
just
I
to
would
add
say.
about the MMGBSA,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
example, I do a MMGBSA for 200 nanoseconds.
Mhm.
And how much of the deviation is allowed? When I take a standard deviation plot,
Mhm.
how much of it can be added as a good range or an acceptable range in your experience?
Anything like whatever we are doing, it is only virtually. So we just whatever the results what we got among them, we'll try to compare it and all. But if it is
Okay.
deviation is more, then definitely, if we are looking into the, of course, definitely we need to take a set of molecules and we need to do experimentally how to check the activity, and then only you can compare. So whatever virtual calculations you do, so you have to correlate it with experimental part. So then only you can make some amount of conclusion.
So it's just from case to case studies.
Yes, yes, it varies from case to case, definitely.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, how about doing a potential mean force calculation energy from the molecular dynamics simulation?
Yeah, even that is also one of the parameter that too has a significance. But still, again, don't completely rely only on the computational results. Always try to validate or compare it with the experimental results.
Okay.
Want students to ask more questions. So the panel discussion is about how do you go about the problems, and see, I want students to ask more because you have to crack the solution for the problems. So please think over, and you have time and you have experts who are there. Please try to utilize this time as much as possible.
Dr. Vidya, I think Dr. Manikandan can share the problem now. We have not yet started discussing.
Yeah, I just want the YouTube to be closed now, and then he can share the problems. YouTube is closed? Okay. Now you can, yeah.